August 14th, 1981. New York City woke under a heavy summer heat, the kind that sticks to the skin and makes the streets feel closer than they really are. In Brooklyn, inside the dim glow of the Motion Lounge, a man known as Dominic "Sonny Black" Napolitano was moving with an eerie calmness that made even hardened mobsters uneasy. Sonny Black wasn't afraid of much. He wasn't supposed to be. A captain in the Bonanno crime family didn't show fear. Not to the street guys, not to his rivals, not even to his own reflection. But that morning, something was different. Something in the way he pushed open the door, the slow way he exhaled, the faint tremor hiding beneath the surface of his confidence. He asked the bartender for a word. Just a word. And in the Mafia, a word could mean anything, from a beating to a funeral. The bartender approached, expecting maybe instructions, maybe a message, maybe another one of Sonny's quiet orders. Instead, Sonny reached into his pocket and placed his apartment keys on the counter. Then a thick roll of cash, wrapped tight with a rubber band. Then, slowly, deliberately, he slid off the rings, diamond-encrusted, heavy, unmistakably mob royalty, and placed them beside the money. No speeches. No explanations. Just a quiet gesture that said more than words could. Finally, he said the sentence nobody in the Mafia ever wanted to speak out loud. "I don't know if I'm coming back." Just like that, the bar went silent. A silence so sharp it felt like a knife pressed against the throat of the room. The normal chatter, drinks clinking, cards shuffling, whispers of upcoming scores, died instantly. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath. Men who feared nothing suddenly exchanged nervous glances. They didn't ask questions. In this world, the truth was often worse than imagination. And if a man like Sonny Black didn't know whether he'd return, something catastrophic was in motion. He turned, walked out of the Motion Lounge, and stepped into a waiting car. No entourage. No backup. Just a single ride to Staten Island, a ride he knew would likely be his last. Because he knew what they knew. The Mafia had finally learned the truth. Not a rumor. Not a whisper. Not a suspicion. A fact. A brutal, undeniable truth that shattered the very foundation of Cosa Nostra. One of their own, one of their rising stars, Donnie Brasco, was not who he claimed to be. Donnie wasn't a jewel thief. He wasn't a street hustler. He wasn't some small-time guy trying to make it big. He was an FBI agent, Joe Pistone. And Sonny Black was the man who had opened the door to him, the man who vouched for him, the man who had brought him deep into the heart of the Mafia. In this life, betrayal wasn't just a crime. It was a death sentence. And even though Sonny hadn't betrayed anyone, it didn't matter. The Mafia didn't care about intent. They cared about consequences. And the consequence was catastrophic. Because Donnie Brasco, this quiet, unassuming man who hung around bars and listened more than he talked, had done something nobody had ever managed to do. He infiltrated the Mafia from the inside. He lived among them, ate with them, bled with them. He was closer to becoming a made man than any outsider had ever come. 6 years undercover. 6 years gathering intel that would shake the 5 families. 6 years where a single slip-up could have meant a bullet in the back of his head. And Sonny Black, the man who trusted him, was now walking toward his own execution. The car crossed the bridge into Staten Island, the sun hanging low, orange and cruel. The driver said nothing. They never do in moments like this. Silence is the only honest companion on the way to death. Sonny stared out the window as the city rolled by, thinking, not about running, not about hiding, not about begging. He was old-school Mafia. He'd taken the oath, and he intended to honor it. Honor was a funny thing in that world. It demanded absolute obedience, even when it led you straight to the grave. The car stopped in front of a quiet, nondescript house. It might as well have had a sign that read, "Last stop." Sonny stepped out, straightened his shirt, fixed his collar, and walked with the same calm swagger he'd had all his life. He descended into the basement, the smell of concrete and damp air greeting him like a cold handshake. And that was it. No dramatic gunfight. No shouting. No pleadings. Just a door closing behind him. He never walked out again. Because the Mafia had made up its mind. They needed someone to blame for the catastrophe that was coming. The indictments, the arrests, the trials, the chaos. And the man who brought Donnie Brasco in, the man who made the fatal mistake of trusting an outsider, had to pay. Sonny Black knew it. He never flinched, never begged, never blamed. He accepted his fate the same way he lived his life, quietly, with a kind of grim dignity. And outside, the city kept moving. Cars honked. Kids played. The world spun on. No one knew that a Mafia captain had just walked into hell. No one knew that an undercover agent had just changed history. But inside that basement, in the silence where loyalty and death intersected, the truth was clear. Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco, had pulled off the most dangerous infiltration in FBI history. And Sonny Black was paying the ultimate price. Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please click on subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. Now back to the story. Before Joe Pistone ever stepped into a Mafia bar, before he ever shook hands with a killer or drank espresso with a capo, he had to do something far more terrifying. He had to erase himself. He had to bury Joe Pistone, the husband, the father, the son, the FBI agent, and become a man who never existed. His new name, Donnie Brasco. His new life, Jewel Thief. His new world, the underbelly of New York's criminal kingdom. On paper, it sounded clean. In reality, it was like stepping into a grave and pulling the dirt over himself. The FBI stripped him down to the bare bones of a man and rebuilt him with lies that needed to feel truer than truth. He learned the trade, gemology, appraisals, safes, alarm systems. He learned how to talk like a thief, walk like one, think like one. When the transformation was complete, the mirror reflected a stranger. A man who looked like Joe Pistone but couldn't afford to act like him. The first rule of undercover work was simple: if you hesitate, you're dead. If you forget who you're supposed to be, you're dead. If you act too smart, you're dead. If you act too dumb, you're dead. Welcome to the Mafia. He kissed his wife goodbye without telling her what he was really doing. He hugged his kids, knowing they'd grow up years without him. He walked out the door and into the shadows. No agent before him had ever gone this deep, this long, this far. Even the FBI didn't fully understand what they were asking from him. He wasn't just going undercover. He was disappearing. New York is a city built on noise, honking horns, subway screams, shouting crowds. But in those 6 months, for Joe Pistone, the city felt silent. Every night, he sat alone on bar stools in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Little Italy, places where wise guys hung out, laughed, gambled, bragged, plotted, drank. He didn't push. He didn't force conversations. He didn't pretend to be something impressive. He just became familiar. The ghost at the bar. The quiet guy with a drink and a watchful eye. The man who never said too much, never too little. He learned to blend into the smoke-filled rooms like another shadow. Loneliness became his companion. Danger became his background noise. He couldn't form patterns. Never the same bar, never the same hour. Predictability meant death. Comfort meant danger. For 6 long months he waited. And waited. And waited. With no guarantee anything would happen. Most undercover ops lasted weeks. Maybe months. But this felt like trying to catch lightning in a bottle with your bare hands in the dark. One night, he walked into a small Manhattan bar. Dim lights. Sticky counter. Faces he recognized, but none that recognized him. He'd seen the bartender before, a guy who clearly had friends in low places, the kind of gatekeeper who slid cash under tables and made introductions with a nod. Joe, Donnie, decided it was time to take a calculated risk. He sat, ordered a drink, made small talk. Then, he placed a small package wrapped in brown paper on the bar. Inside, diamonds. Real diamonds. Confiscated by the government, now serving a different purpose. He leaned in, casual, like this was a Tuesday. "I need 10 grand for these," he said. No explanation. No justification. The bartender didn't blink. Didn't inspect the stones. Didn't haggle. He simply slid the package off the counter, slipped it into his pocket, and walked away. No promises. No handshake. No guarantee the man wasn't about to steal the jewels and disappear forever. Donnie went home that night unsure whether he'd just made his first connection or his last mistake. Days passed. Nothing. A week passed. Nothing. 2 weeks. Still nothing. Any normal thief would have stormed back demanding answers. But Donnie Brasco wasn't normal. He came back casually, ordered drinks, slipped into the room like a rumor. No pressure. No questions. He played the long game, the only game the Mafia respects. Then one night, the bartender finally approached him. He reached beneath the counter, pulled out a plain envelope, and slid it across the bar. "This was left for you," he said. No smile. No explanation. Donnie opened it. Inside, $10,000. Every dollar accounted for. No cheating. No skimming. It was the bartender's silent way of saying, "I believe you. I trust you. You're one of us. Let's do business." That moment, the quiet exchange of an envelope between two men on opposite sides of the law, was the spark that lit the fuse. It was the handshake before the handshake. The invitation before the invitation. The first brick in the bridge that would eventually lead straight into the heart of the Bonanno crime family. Pistone didn't celebrate. Didn't smile. Didn't let relief show. He simply nodded, pocketed the money, and ordered another drink. Inside, though, he knew something had shifted. A door had opened. The Mafia had taken the bait. And from that point forward, every step he took would be deeper into a world where trust was poison, lies were currency, and death was always one mistake away. That quiet night in a dim bar was the beginning of the end for one of America's most feared crime families. It didn't happen with bullets. It didn't happen with sirens. It didn't happen with raids or arrests. It started with a small brown package, a bartender's nod, and an envelope stuffed with cash. The moment Donnie Brasco was born was the moment the Mafia began to die. In undercover work, trust is a strange, double-edged blessing. When criminals begin to trust you, they let you in. But trust is not acceptance. Trust is a test, one that can turn into suspicion in the blink of an eye. And in the Mafia, suspicion is a death sentence. For Joe Pistone, now fully breathing as Donnie Brasco, that moment arrived sooner than he expected. It started with a look, a glance exchanged between two mobsters who'd been around long enough to smell something off even if they couldn't name it. Donnie had been earning well, bringing in jewels, making introductions, handling business. His street credibility was rising. And that was the problem. In this world, the moment you look too good to be true, men start wondering who you really are. One night, in a dingy Brooklyn club reeking of cigars and stale whiskey, Jilly, the maid man who'd first opened the Mafia door for Donnie, called him over. "You. Back here." Donnie followed him past the bar, through a narrow hallway, to a door that had no business being closed. It clicked shut behind him. The room was small, the walls the color of nicotine, lit by a single overhead bulb that made everything look like an interrogation chamber. Jilly sat. Two other men, Frankie and Patty, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. No greetings. No jokes. Just silence. Then a gun hit the table with a heavy metallic thud that made Donnie's heartbeat echo in his ears. "Sit," Jilly said. Donnie sat. And the questioning began. "Where you from? What street? Who'd you run with? What's your father's name? What jobs you pulled? How you bypass safes? How you get alarms open? How come nobody knows you? Who vouches for you?" The questions came like blows. Fast. Hard. Designed to make him slip, to contradict himself, to panic, to reveal even the smallest crack in his cover story. Time dissolved. There was no clock in the room, no window, no way to measure how long he'd been under the lights. 10 minutes felt like an hour. An hour felt like a lifetime. Donnie stuck to his story, the same cover he'd practiced over and over until it felt like memory, not invention. He spoke like a thief. He thought like a thief. He felt like a thief. But this wasn't about answers. This was about endurance. A real gangster didn't get nervous. A real gangster didn't fold under pressure. And Donnie Brasco, if he wanted to survive, had to prove he was one of them. As the 5th hour dragged on, sweat soaked the back of his shirt.
His voice was raw.
His throat burned. His nerves were screaming. But he didn't break. Finally, Jilly leaned back in his chair. He wasn't convinced. Not yet. Made men never needed evidence to kill someone. Only a feeling. All right, Jilly said quietly. Enough. But Frankie and Patty weren't backing down. Not even close. Frankie leaned forward, his face inches from Donnie's. You know what I think, he said. I think somebody's full of shit. Patty stepped closer. You know what happens to bullshitters, Donnie? Donnie remained still, silent, breathing slow. Jilly finally stood, ready to call it off, when Donnie, tired, cornered, and needing a way out, did the unthinkable. He made them angry. When you're cornered in the Mafia, there are only two ways out. Fear or respect. Respect was impossible. Fear was risky. But Donnie knew the rules. You can hit a mobster. You can fight an associate. But you can never, ever lay a hand on a made man. That rule carried the weight of death behind it. Frankie wasn't made. Patty wasn't made. But they thought they owned the room. So Donnie stood up, clenched his fist, and threw a punch so fast and so hard it caught Frankie completely off guard. The mobster stumbled, shocked. Donnie didn't hesitate. He swung again, adrenaline pushing reason aside. Frankie crashed into the wall. For 1 second, a split, fragile second, it seemed like Donnie might have made the right play. Then Patty jumped him. A fist smashed into Donnie's jaw. Another slammed into his ribs. He went down hard, the breath knocked out of him. But he didn't fight back. He couldn't, because Patty was a made man. And punching a made man wasn't just forbidden, it was suicide. So Donnie braced himself, absorbing blow after blow. Blood filled his mouth. His vision blurred. But he didn't swing. He didn't defend himself. He let the beating come. And that, ironically, saved his life. Jilly finally shoved Patty off him. That's enough, he barked. Patty spat on the floor. Guy's a punk. Frankie wiped blood from his lip. But even as he glared at Donnie, something had changed. They'd expected Donnie to fold.
To beg. To break.
To run. But he didn't. He took the punches. He delivered one of his own.
He bled.
He stood back up. Only real gangsters bled like that. Only real gangsters took hits, without whining. Only real gangsters risked their lives in the face of fear. This was a world where the FBI couldn't teach you survival. Where bravery wasn't measured in training drills or tactical briefings. This was a world where being beaten bloody was a badge of authenticity. Jilly stared at Donnie for a long moment. Then he nodded. You're all right, he said. And just like that, the tension in the room evaporated. No apologies. No handshake. No acknowledgement of the near-death moment Donnie had just survived. That wasn't how mobsters operated. But the unspoken truth hung heavy. Donnie Brasco had passed his first test of blood. Not because he was fearless. Not because he was brave. But because when death stared him in the face, he stared back. And for the first time, the Mafia began to believe him. There's a moment in every undercover operation when the stakes tilt from dangerous to deadly, when the line between pretending and becoming starts to blur. For Joe Pistone, that moment came the instant he stepped through the invisible wall separating street hustlers from the Mafia's inner engine. The Bonanno family had opened its doors. And Joe, now Donnie Brasco, walked through them. What waited inside wasn't just criminality. It was a world governed by rituals, paranoia, blood loyalty, and silent threats woven into every handshake. The first time Donnie sat beside Anthony Mira, a stone-faced enforcer with a reputation so violent that other mobsters crossed the street to avoid him, he felt the room shift. Mira didn't shake hands to greet someone. He shook hands to decide whether he could trust you enough to kill you quickly if needed. He introduced Donnie to a new face, a man with cold eyes and a story whispered like myth, Lefty Ruggiero. Lefty wasn't just another wise guy. Lefty had 23 confirmed bodies to his name, 23 people who had breathed their last breath because Lefty had decided they should. But Lefty wasn't loud or theatrical. He wasn't a movie-style gangster. He was quiet, calculating, tired in the way only a man who lived on borrowed time could be. And he liked Donnie. That was the beginning of everything. Soon, Donnie wasn't just sitting near killers, he was sitting with them,
Talking with them.
learning from them, eating next to them, laughing at their jokes, studying their tempers, absorbing their customs. He became a fixture, a trusted shadow, a man whose silence spoke their language. He wasn't in the Mafia, but he was in the room, and that was enough to change the course of history. The higher you climb in the Mafia, the quieter the rooms get. Men with real power don't need to shout. They speak with nods, glances, and raised eyebrows. Dominic "Sonny Black" Napolitano was one of those men. A captain in the Bonanno family. A strategist. A soldier. A killer wrapped in a calm exterior, like a razor blade hidden inside velvet. Sonny Black didn't run his crew through fear. He ran it through structure, loyalty, and an unwavering belief in the rules of Cosa Nostra. When Lefty brought Donnie to Sonny's social club, the Motion Lounge in Brooklyn, the air felt different. Heavy, electric, thick with quiet conversations and unstated threats. Sonny studied Donnie with eyes that could see through lies like glass. Then he said the most important words Donnie had ever heard. "You're with me now." And with that sentence, Donnie Brasco's undercover operation went from risky to unprecedented. From that day forward, Donnie became Sonny Black's shadow. He followed him everywhere. To the Motion Lounge, to backroom meetings, to after-hours gambling spots, to quiet corners where business was spoken in whispers, to rooftops where Sonny fed his pigeons like a man tending to his only untainted companions. The pigeons fascinated Donnie. To Sonny, they were solace. Symbols of peace in a life of violence. He spoke to them as gently as he ordered hits. It reminded Joe, somewhere deep inside, that these men were human. Dangerous, yes. Deadly, yes. But human. That realization made the job harder and more dangerous. With Sonny Black came access, real access. Donnie witnessed drug deals worth thousands. He watched extortion money change hands. He saw hijacked trucks cut open to reveal mountains of stolen goods. He learned how bookmaking worked, who controlled which union, who paid tribute to whom. And the most terrifying part? He belonged there. No one questioned him. No one doubted him. No one gave him a second look. He wasn't a visitor anymore. He was part of the daily rhythm, the heartbeat of a crime family. Day by day, he became indispensable. Night by night, the FBI agents monitoring the operation realized something chilling. Joe Pistone was adapting too well. The Mafia wasn't a mission anymore. It was a routine. A life. Joe moved like them.
Talked like them.
Thought like them. He didn't flinch at violence.
Didn't blink at threats.
Didn't hesitate to play the part of a criminal. And that was the terrifying part, because undercover work doesn't just change the lies you tell. It changes you. Agents listening to recorded conversations would ask themselves, is he acting or becoming? Even Joe felt it sometimes, when he laughed at mob jokes, when he enjoyed the camaraderie, when he felt the thrill of being trusted by men who trusted almost no one. Every time Sonny invited him into another secret, another deal, another plan, Joe felt the walls closing in. He was living two lives, but only one of them felt real. And the deeper he sank, the more the two identities blurred. One night, Sonny Black and Donnie stood outside the Motion Lounge as the streetlights flickered. "Donnie," Sonny said quietly, "you stick with me, you'll go places. I promise you." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a promise of wealth. It was a promise of family. A family built on violence and betrayal, but a family Joe had spent years earning a place in. Hearing that, something inside Joe Pistone cracked. Because he knew what Sonny didn't. One day, this entire world would come crashing down because of him. And the men who trusted him, men like Lefty, men like Sonny, would pay the price. But he couldn't stop. He was too deep, too trusted, too embedded. There was no walking away now. Not without blowing the entire operation and signing his own death warrant. And so, every day, he walked deeper into the heart of darkness. Every day, the Mafia embraced him as one of their own. Every night, the FBI watched in awe and dread as Joe Pistone became something they hadn't anticipated. A man the Mafia believed in. A man the Mafia relied on. A man the Mafia might one day make. Joe wasn't just infiltrating the Bonannos. He was becoming one of them. And that transformation was more dangerous than any gun, any threat, any interrogation he had ever faced. Every undercover mission reaches a moment when the darkness stops being something you step into and becomes something that surrounds you completely. For Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco, that moment arrived when the Bonanno family finally opened its vault of secrets. Not metaphorical secrets. Not gossip. Not rumors. Real secrets. The kind whispered only to men who carried the weight of Cosa Nostra on their shoulders. The kind that could topple nations, ruin lives, and burn entire families to ashes. And Donnie was now inside that circle. By the early 1980s, the Bonanno family wasn't just surviving, they were expanding. They were rebuilding after past betrayals, reorganizing themselves like a wounded animal preparing for another bite. And Sonny Black, Donnie's mentor, protector, and guide, was placing Donnie right in the center of everything. 1. The pizza connection heroin pipeline. Donnie heard it discussed casually, like ordering a cup of coffee. Heroin moving from Sicily to Brooklyn. Distributed through pizza shops that served more powder than pepperoni. $1 billion pipeline. And Donnie was listening to the men who controlled it. 2. Politicians on the payroll. He watched envelopes being passed to men in suits who should have upheld the law, not sold it. But money talks louder than justice in certain corners of New York. 3. Murder over espresso. Donnie sat at tables where homicide was planned like business strategy. A name whispered. A nod exchanged. A life ended. No shouting. No drama. Just quiet sentences that changed the course of someone's existence. 4. The Bonanno Civil War. The family was splitting in two, loyalists on Sonny Black's side, rebels on the other. Everyone talked in coded phrases. Everyone watched their backs. Everyone suspected everyone. And Donnie, the outsider who wasn't really an outsider, was caught right in the riptide. 5. Florida drug deals and casino scams. Trips to Florida became routine. Deals in dim hotel rooms, casino ripoffs caught on FBI cameras, wise guys bragging about money that wasn't theirs to spend. The deeper Donnie went, the more he saw empire-level crime unfolding right in front of him. Donnie wasn't just infiltrating one crew anymore. He was becoming the FBI's most valuable weapon. He opened doors agents had dreamed about for decades. He set up agents in Los Angeles, giving them a pipeline straight into West Coast Mafia dealings. Then he connected another team to Milwaukee, putting the FBI inside another crime family entirely. In the Bureau's eyes, Joe Pistone wasn't just an undercover agent. He was a one-man network, a spider weaving threads into crime families that once seemed impenetrable. But the FBI didn't understand something. The deeper Donnie went, the more dangerous his world became. Trust breeds opportunity. Trust also breeds jealousy. One mobster, greedy, petty, insecure, couldn't handle Donnie's rise, his closeness with Sonny Black, his access to money, power, and information. So he did what cowards always do. He whispered poison. He claimed Donnie stole $250,000 from a drug deal. $250,000. In corporate America, that's fraud. In the Mafia? Automatic death. No questions. No appeals. No mercy. A bullet behind the ear. A body in a trunk. A shallow grave in New Jersey. And Donnie had no idea the accusation had even been made until the Mafia did what they always do when lives hang in the balance. They called a sit-down. It took place in a quiet back room of a restaurant that had seen more secrets than the Vatican. The men who arrived weren't street punks. They weren't errand boys. They were soldiers, captains, made men whose names were spoken with caution. Guns tucked behind belts, eyes scanning corners, voices low and sharp. A sit-down wasn't a meeting. It was a courtroom, a battlefield, a final judgment. If Donnie said one wrong word, if he breathed incorrectly, if he hesitated, they'd shoot him right there. No hesitation. No regret. When Sonny Black walked in, the room shifted. He sat at the head of the table. Then the accusation was laid out. Donnie Brasco, trusted jewel thief, loyal earner, Sonny's guy, had supposedly stolen $250,000. A number that big didn't just imply theft. It implied betrayal. Donnie kept his face calm, expression steady, breathing even. Inside, his heart wasn't beating, it was bracing. This wasn't an interrogation. This was a funeral waiting for a reason. He explained everything. Where the money had gone. What deal had actually happened. Who witnessed it. Why it was impossible for him to have stolen anything. No emotion. No anger. Just clarity. Sonny's eyes flicked to the accuser. A pause. A silence thick enough to choke on. Then Sonny said, "He's telling the truth." "You're not." The accuser froze. And everyone knew what that meant. Sonny wasn't defending Donnie out of kindness. He was defending him because Donnie was too valuable, too consistent, too loyal to question. The sit-down ended. Donnie walked out alive. But nothing was the same. Surviving a sit-down doesn't clear your name. It paints a target on your back. Whispers follow you. Suspicion sticks to your clothes. Men start watching you with new eyes. Donnie had passed the test.
But now?
He had enemies in every borough. Brooklyn hated him. Queens didn't trust him. Manhattan questioned him. Staten Island watched him. The Bronx gossiped about him. And all of it added up to one terrifying truth. He wasn't just deep undercover. He was deep in danger. Every handshake could be a setup. Every ride could be his last. Every joke could be hiding a threat. Every hug could be masking a knife. Joe Pistone was now living minute to minute in a world built on death. And he still had further to fall. For 5 years, Joe Pistone had lived 2 lives. The real one, Joe, was fading like a photograph left in the sun. The other one, Donnie Brasco, was now breathing, moving, surviving in a world where trust was more dangerous than bullets. He had eaten with killers, laughed with extortionists, held secrets worth wars, and stood beside a mafia captain who believed in him more than anyone in the FBI ever had. That belief, that loyalty, that deadly bond was about to reach the point of no return. It was a quiet moment, one of those rare lulls in a life built on chaos. Sonny Black sat at a small wooden table in the Motion Lounge, the hum of conversation fading behind him. Outside, Brooklyn traffic rolled by, unaware that history was turning in a dim bar lit by flickering bulbs. Sonny poured Donnie a shot, then poured one for himself. He didn't smile, didn't posture, didn't warm up the conversation with jokes. He just said it directly. "Donnie, I'm putting your name in." Donnie blinked. "Putting my name in for what?" Sonny looked at him with a mixture of pride, affection, and cold certainty. "To get you made." The words landed like a punch. Becoming a made man wasn't an offer. It wasn't an honor. It was the highest ritual of Cosa Nostra, holy in a twisted way, unbreakable, sacred. A made man could never be touched without permission. A made man had access to secrets, power, money, respect. A made man belonged to the mafia, body, blood, and soul. And most importantly, a made man must kill for the family. Joe Pistone felt the room blur for a second. He heard Sonny's voice, but it sounded far away, like an echo underwater. "Donnie, you earned it. You stayed loyal. You made money. You kept your mouth shut. You're ready." Ready. He had spent years pretending to be a criminal. Now the mafia wanted to make the disguise permanent. When Pistone reported the proposal to his handlers, they went pale. They'd prepared for guns, for violence, for near-death escape scenarios. But this? No undercover agent in American history had ever been proposed for induction into the mafia. The FBI knew the rules. To be made, Donnie Brasco would have to take part in a hit. Not watch it. Not assist it.
Perform it.
Sonny Black already had the victim lined up. Bruno Indelicato. A man who had crossed the wrong people. A man whose death would balance old debts. A real target. A real hit. A real murder. If Donnie backed out, he'd die. If he performed the hit, innocent blood would be on his hands, and the FBI would be allowing a murder to happen. For the first time in years, the Bureau realized the nightmare truth. They had let this go too far. Donnie wasn't just inside the Mafia. He was about to become the Mafia. Pistone wasn't naive. He knew the rules. He knew what was coming. And he knew one more thing. If he refused Sonny Black's proposal, he would be killed instantly. Not questioned. Not interrogated.
Killed.
So he came up with the only plan that made sense. Fake the murder. Stage everything. Control the scene. Make the Mafia believe Bruno and Delicato had been hit, while actually putting him into protective custody. The FBI debated it. Some agents supported it. Others were horrified. But the clock was ticking. Sonny Black was pushing for the ceremony, preparing for the ritual, making calls, setting everything in motion. It was the most dangerous, high-stakes bluff the FBI had ever attempted. And then, headquarters intervened. The order came down like a hammer. Shut it down. The operation ends now. Pull him out. A single sentence destroyed 5 years of work and shattered Joe Pistone in a way no bullet ever could. Joe Pistone didn't cry easily. FBI agents aren't built for sentiment. Undercover agents are built for even less. But when he got the call, when they told him the operation was over, when they told him he could never go back to Sonny Black, Lefty Ruggiero, and the men who trusted him, he broke. Not because he feared for himself. Not because he was relieved. But because he knew what was coming. Sonny Black had risked everything for him. Defended him. Protected him. Offered him the highest honor the Mafia could give.
And now?
Now Sonny had vouched for a man who didn't exist. A man who would never stand beside him. A man who would never take the oath he had been offered. Joe Pistone cried because he knew the Mafia's rules better than most gangsters. When a man proposes someone for membership, he takes responsibility for that person's actions. And if that person is revealed to be a federal agent, the price is death. Sonny Black wasn't a villain in Joe's story. He wasn't a monster to him. He was a mentor.
A guide.
A friend. Twisted by circumstance, yes, but someone who believed in Donnie Brasco more deeply than anyone else had. And the FBI had just sentenced Sonny Black to die. The last time Joe Pistone walked out of the Motion Lounge, he didn't know it would be the final time. He didn't get to say goodbye. Didn't get to warn Sonny. Didn't get to explain. He just stepped into the sunlight as Donnie Brasco for the last time and walked away forever. Behind him, a Mafia captain was preparing to welcome him into the most dangerous brotherhood on earth. Ahead of him, the truth was waiting. The arrest warrants. The indictments. The betrayal Sonny Black didn't yet know existed. Joe Pistone had done his duty. But the cost, the human cost, was about to be paid by someone else. Someone who never saw it coming. The end began quietly. No sirens. No gunshots. No chase through city streets. Just 2 FBI agents stepping through the door of the Motion Lounge, a Brooklyn den of smoke, threats, and whispered business, and asking to see the man who ruled it with calm authority. Dominic Sonny Black Napolitano. He wasn't expecting trouble. He wasn't expecting betrayal. He was expecting another day of running a criminal empire. But the agents weren't there for business. They were there to deliver a truth that would kill him. One agent placed a glossy photograph on the table. A familiar face. A familiar smile. A familiar man. Do you know him? Sonny Black looked at the photo. Yes, he said. That's Donnie Brasco. The agent shook his head.
No.
That is Special Agent Joseph Pistone.
FBI.
The bar fell silent. The agents waited for a reaction. Panic, denial, fury, confusion. They got none. Sonny Black didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't curse. Didn't grab a weapon. His face didn't show shock. It showed understanding. A terrible, heavy understanding. He nodded once. A small, almost respectful gesture. All right, he said. And that was it. No questions. No excuses. No begging. He knew what he had done. He had brought an outsider into the Mafia. Not just any outsider. A federal agent. A man he had vouched for. A man he had trusted. A man he had promised to elevate into Cosa Nostra itself. And in the Mafia, such a mistake did not simply hurt your reputation. It ended your life. After the agents left, Sonny Black didn't run, didn't call a lawyer, didn't try to disappear. He walked up to a rooftop where he kept his pigeons, the birds he fed every morning, the creatures he cared for more gently than he cared for most humans. This was his sanctuary, the only place he ever allowed himself softness. He looked at the sky, at the birds circling overhead, at the horizon he knew he would never see again.
He wasn't thinking about the FBI.
He wasn't thinking about Joe Pistone. He was thinking about the rules. And the rule was absolute. You bring an outsider into the Mafia, you die for it. 2 weeks passed. Sonny knew the call would come. He woke each day waiting for it. He slept each night expecting a knock that might be his last. Then one afternoon, it finally happened. A voice on the phone.
Come. Cold.
Final. Come in. He didn't ask where. He didn't ask why. He simply nodded, hung up, and prepared. He removed his rings, symbols of status, wealth, and power. He placed his watch on the table, emptied his pockets, handed his keys to a friend. I won't be needing these, he said softly. Those were his last words to the world. Then he walked out the door. Not with fear. Not with regret. With acceptance. They took him to a basement in Brooklyn or Staten Island. The exact location remains debated, but the ritual was the same everywhere. A man sits. A door closes. A sentence is carried out. No theatrics. No shouting. Just the mechanical ending of a life that had broken the code. Sonny Black was shot. But that wasn't the real punishment. When his body was found, his hands had been cut off. It wasn't random. It wasn't anger. It was symbolic. Those hands brought an outsider into Cosa Nostra. Those hands paid the price. The Mafia didn't stop with Sonny Black. They needed more blood, more punishment, more cleansing. Tony Mira, the first mobster to bring Donnie Brasco into the fold, was hunted down and shot multiple times in a hallway. Joey Napolitano, Sonny's brother, was murdered as well, guilt by association. And then there was Lefty Ruggiero. Lefty, who had trusted Donnie. Lefty, who had mentored him. Lefty, who had defended him at sit-downs. Lefty, who had given him the Mafia Bible rule by rule. The order for Lefty's execution came fast. But as he walked out of his apartment, stripped of jewelry, carrying nothing but the resignation of a doomed man, the FBI intercepted him. They cuffed him, pulled him into a car, saved him from being murdered by his own family, but not from the heartbreak of betrayal. Lefty spent the rest of his life knowing the friend he believed in was an illusion. And that knowledge killed him more slowly than any bullet ever could. When the FBI unveiled the truth behind Donnie Brasco's 6 years undercover, the Mafia didn't just stumble. It collapsed. 235 mobsters fell. Associates, soldiers, capo regimes, consiglieres, high-ranking bosses. Entire networks, spanning drug routes, unions, political pipelines, gambling syndicates, imploded. And the greatest shock of all, the Commission, the Mafia's ruling council, cracked under the weight. The Bonannos were weakened, nearly destroyed. The Gambinos, Colombos, Lucchese's, and Genoveses were shaken to their core. Donnie Brasco, quiet, calm, methodical, had done more damage than any war between crime families. He had fundamentally rewritten the map of American organized crime. Joe Pistone didn't celebrate, didn't pose for cameras, didn't go on victory tours. He vanished. The FBI erased his name, created a new identity, moved him to secret locations, sometimes changing them again and again. And to this day, a price remains on his head. $500,000. $500,000 for a ghost. For a man who walked into hell and left it burning behind him. He survived. But he lost everything: his old name, his home, his friendships, his peace. His story became legend. But legends always come with scars. After seeing how one man's courage shattered a criminal empire, and how loyalty, betrayal, and justice collided in the darkest corners of New York, what would you risk if you were asked to walk into a world where one mistake means death?
Would you step in?
Or step back? Your answer says everything. Thank you for watching the story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video. Click on the screen to watch the next one.